Challenges. One of the main things that we experience on a daily basis in our lives, from decision making to simply doing things, like figuring out where to eat with your friends or finishing up a work project as the deadline looms above you. These difficulties often stem from external factors that are outside of our control, set by someone else. In the case of my two examples, figuring out where to eat is caused by the many great places that we can choose to eat from, or the deadline example, which is set by someone in a higher up position. However, external hardships can be detrimental if we can't deal with them, and even though you can delay when to deal with the challenge and save it for later, failing at this challenge set by an outside force can lead to an even greater challenge: ourselves. As emotions come together, build up over time, you can end up becoming your own greatest enemy. There are many games that use difficulty and challenge as a tool, like Dark Souls and Cuphead, which upon completing them, can help you give that confidence boost needed to take on the other challenges of life. But there's one game that manages to explore this idea of winning against yourself, coupled along with challenging gameplay. This game is Celeste. If you have not played Celeste, I'm very sorry, but this video will have spoilers for the game, both in gameplay and in story, so this is your spoiler warning, I guess. But without further ado, let's dive right into Celeste and how the game manages to convey one of the greatest challenges of all, in the Memo to Overcoming Yourself. At some point in your life, you've probably felt down, like you have reached a slump in your life and you get the feeling that, hey, I've got to do something about this, thinking that you are not satisfied with your life and that something must be done, like change. This is how the story of Celeste starts off, with Madeline heading to the bottom of Celeste Mountain Trail, wanting to climb the mountain for no particular reason at all, other than being able to prove something to herself. This feeling or overwhelming emotion of doing something, having a clear objective in mind, is called motivation. Motivation is the feeling that starts off the chain reaction that keeps us on set to complete our goals. Let's say that you feel that you yourself are out of shape, which in turn leads you to get a sense of motivation that you should start working out more, and there you go, that's motivation. Motivation stems from a desire to improve the situation that you are currently in. However, although it may be very easy to start feeling a sense of motivation, it's also the hardest feeling to have a full grip on. You see, just as fast as motivation can come, with the snap of your fingers it can suddenly disappear. In this chain reaction of self-improvement, there are other factors alongside motivation that must be achieved to progress. This other core feeling is willpower. As you start your journey in Celeste, jumping off some dangerous falls, you meet an old lady that tells you, if you thought the jumps to a house were daunting, that this mountain is probably not for you. This lady here represents the doubts, the people, and even yourself around you that don't see the potential that you have and are a prime factor in either making you lose your motivation or creating a new form of rage-induced motivation. What I'm explaining now are just some of the many problems that you will encounter at the start of your journey. There will be people out there that will say you won't make it, and it's how you choose to react to their claims what determines the outcome of the journey. What you need when you need to dig deep inside yourself and find the strength to push forward to keep that motivation afloat. By falling to the claims of others puts you in a far worse situation, as not only did they take away any motivation you had, but they sent you right back to the start. And to be clear, as generic as it sounds, do not listen to others. I mean, there are times, of course, where you have to listen to some people and, just follow the rules, but if someone is blatantly telling you that what you're trying to achieve is silly or out of reach, or that you're not able to do it, don't listen to that. Even if they are right, you will never know if you never try, and by failing to try, you miss out on an experience that you could have made. And back to Celeste, Madeline does not listen to this old lady. Instead, she makes her way up to the first part of the mountain, a tough stride, and continues moving on, and meets Theo, a fellow climber in which she can confide in. Just this first hurdle of climbing the first part of the mountain had already done more good for Madeline despite the efforts. She has managed to retain her will to climb the mountain and met a friend along the way, two things that would not have happened if you had given in to what the old lady had said earlier. Of course, this is a game, and that was only the first 20 minutes of the game. However, if we zoom back and put this in context of an actual life, this small moment here in the game is far bigger than it appears. Simply showing up to the bottom of the mountain itself can prove to be daunting, seeing the size of it can be daunting, and above all, hearing the words of someone else can be detrimental and hurts you deep in the heart. Even though actions speak louder than words, that does infer that those words have a strong influence as well. What the game has managed to convey to us is that in order for us to progress on our hike to betterment, we should take it in small chunks, shrink it down, and take every foot forward step by step. This is also echoed in the chapters of Celeste, as after each chapter, the game doesn't force you to go right into the next one, but rather lets you decide when you are ready to move on, and that's just how you should start off. First, let the feeling of motivation come to you naturally, manifest it, and stay strong to yourself, and don't rush the process. Take your time so that it can grow a part of your current goal and settle in your journey, and before you know it, you've made it to the second part of your journey, consistency. Celeste is a long game, and once you start getting the hang of it, understanding the new mechanics that the game throws at you, you get into this flow state and you start getting constantly good at the game, which also mimics the route to overcoming yourself. Although I am being very generic in labeling the goal and motivation setting side of things by throwing it all under the umbrella of self-improvement, per se, I think that's the best way that I can label it, as by thinking of achieving any goal, it ultimately falls under the category of self-improvement, overcoming yourself, as that goal will end up giving you new experiences and skills that you can use. But back to consistency. Being consistent is now founded from the new willpower you have attained, rather than motivation. Motivation is important in getting you started, but it's how much you want the end goal through your willpower that keeps you invested in the process of being consistent in achieving the result. And as you keep getting better and improving, learning more about the world throughout your consistent efforts in achieving the end goal, it does get easier. The tasks that were hurdles for you at the start of the journey have now become obsolete, a memory of the past, and that's what we can also see in the levels of Celeste. As you progress in the game, you can do better, and you get better, and you just keep improving, I guess. And as the game gets progressively harder, returning to older levels becomes second nature. One of the collectibles in Celeste, the strawberries, are often difficult to get on your first run through that chapter. In returning to them later, as you have improved as a player, they've just gotten a lot easier to collect, which is a reminder both to Madeline in her goals and you in your own quests that you're getting better, that nothing can be beaten. Wait, no, not nothing, yeah. You're on top of the world, and just as Madeline is at the top of the world, she falls right down to the bottom of the mountain, further than when she started off. This downfall, literally falling down in Madeline's story, is an occurrence that happens to all people on their own respective paths to self-improvement. Setbacks. Athletes can be in great shape and then suffer an injury that puts them out of the game for the rest of the season. Writers can suffer tremendous writer's block after having put out a #1 bestseller. You could lose all hope once the difficulty has caught up to you. Other than the start, this setback that you feel when reaching the top is also detrimental, that can cause a lot of people to give up. In fact, it's stories like these that impact others to stop them from starting on chasing their goals. Think about it. If you wanted to become a chef, for instance, and you've heard all the stories of chefs never making it after culinary school, you too would be worried about starting this path of life, and Madeline also felt it too. In fact, she's been feeling it for a long time, even when she felt that anything was possible, but how so? The main villain of Celeste is in fact called a part of you, another version of Madeline that lives inside her head rent-free. Even as Madeline has crossed challenge after challenge, lowering the difficulty bar, this other part of you is always on your left shoulder, telling you to quit, that this isn't going anywhere, and that you aren't good enough. So, when the inevitable setback comes in, these doubts, thoughts and worries all culminate and overwhelm the mind. That feeling you had of achieving anything you set your mind on is gone. That nice path along the trail of life that you envisioned has now swerved off into the ditch. Feeling overwhelmed with problems and challenges is something that we have experienced to an extent. When it looks like all things that are going poorly for you, stress, anxiety and depression, all our emotions that can end up swelling up, and this is where you become your own worst enemy. All hope really is lost, at least for a moment. You see, once Madeline has hit rock bottom, talking with the old lady wants to give up, but is advised to figure out what the other part of you fears. Climbing up, fighting her other self, she apologized to herself, but because in the end, you are both the protagonist and the antagonist of the story. The other part of you, as much as you may dislike the characteristics of them, they've got abilities and emotions that when combined with your own, that the opportunity to become plentiful and open up a lot more. I know it sounds strange that when you work together with yourself you can do anything, but hear me out. The past often contains memories of ourselves that we don't want to remember, times where we were worse off, had done things we regret. People often want to cut ties with it, but that's not how it works. You can't remove something that has already happened, and the best way to deal with it is to own up to it. Realizing that the person in your memories is still you, and you've got to move forward. I really hope that this makes sense, because once you become one with yourself, you can once again get back to that same place before you fell rock bottom. As generic as it sounds, anything is possible when you set your mind to it, and as Madeline works together with herself, she makes her way back up the trail to the summit of Celeste Mountain, because in the end, for each setback, you learn something valuable as to what went wrong, which becomes one step back, and then 2 steps forward. Working alongside our past and other parts of ourselves as we cooperate with and understand ourselves slowly as a process, we are back at the same spot that we found ourselves at previously, and with this new experience, we now know how we can get past it, and then we take the next step, and as does Madeline, working together with her other self, which unlocks a new power-up, the double air dash, which is so much fun to use by the way, making the game that much easier, but the game doesn't get easier at all. The game is at its most difficult at the later stage of the climb, but you feel much more capable now after having made your way back to the top with a new move on your side. Reflecting this is the music, the core melody with its upbeat nature. You feel that you can accomplish anything that the game will throw at you, and once you have made the new strides on the path to achieving your goal, you now have this feeling of assurance in your skill set that even if the challenge is harder than it has ever been prior to this, you are confident and know you can do it, and just as you finally reach your goal, it's time to do one thing: exhale. This track, upon reaching the summit, is appropriately titled Exhale, a reminder to the player to put the controller down and breathe. Take in what they've managed to do. You beat one of the hardest platformers out there, behind ghosts and goblins, but anyways, you did it. Breathe out. And this is not just what Madeline is doing. Breathing out, taking it all in, being proud of herself for what she has managed to accomplish, with all the odds against her. And if she can climb a mountain that's harder to climb than K2 itself, so can you. Of course, some stuff in games are only doable in games, and in life, these would be impossible. But in the context of our world, anything is possible. Reflecting on the challenges you've overcome to get this far, the people you've met, and the knowledge you've learned. Whether you have lived 15 years on Earth or 88 years, you can look back at what you've done to get here, because let me tell you this, life is tough, and you've managed to get past hurdles and multiple obstacles that have been in your path. I can't speak for everyone's experiences, because some have endured harder challenges than others, but we've all overcome some challenge in our lives. And even if you think you haven't, just think back and reflect. Look back and exhale. I don't know how well I've managed to convey the topic that I decided to cover today. You see, this topic is hard to talk about, not just because it's hard to see this concept of life sometimes, but because we've all experienced completely different lives. No two lives are the same. Even if you think you have really lived a similar life to someone else, your thoughts about that situation are bound to differ. Like really, I'm at a loss of words as to how I'm going to conclude this, because I think the previous section summarized it up in a tightly knit manner. Just breathe and exhale and reflect. Reflect on the decisions you've made so far, accept that it's in the past. Focus on the now and do what you feel is the right thing to do. Learn from your mistakes, understand your successes, cherish the good times and accept the bad ones. There's no set rule book on what you can do to overcome your biggest challenge in life yourself. But if there's one thing that I can say, is that my video essay truly did end in the previous section of the video. And this section that I'm writing now is just a bunch of words put together that show that you can't just sit there and reflect, but rather you've got to move on at some point. And what better time to move on than right now? Get yourself out there and remember to always be yourself. And with that, welcome to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching through all this. It means a lot to me, not only because it means I'm doing something right, but especially for this video, I wanted to just talk about this message. Thank you. If you want to see more from me, there is my Patreon and Twitter, both linked in the description and my bio. I really want to say thank you for the support on the last couple of videos throughout the whole of July and up to now even. It's really been quite the months, I guess, for me, but yeah, lots of stuff is happening in life, and this too, so thank you. And as always, any support or critiques are appreciated. As per usual, I like to talk about what I'm playing and what I've done, and I can tell you that I started Shadow of the Colossus and it's really, really good, except for the controls. They suck. The games are so wondrous that, in fact, I'll be making a video about this game sometime this year, I guess, maybe soon. I've now managed to plan out all the videos I'll be making for the rest of the year too, so that feeling makes me really happy, and I can't wait to get those videos out for you guys to watch, and I hope that you will stick around to watch them. But I've got to wrap up now. I've got to play some Guilty Gear, but thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. So with that, Storm out.